Welcome everyone. Sorry, every time I don't know. I have to have a better workflow for this because every time I left you like in the ether, like listening to a song, and then there is an abrupt like 20 second of mute because I have to unmute myself while I I already removed the song. Welcome everyone to this week in Svelte, and I'm your host for today, I'm Paolo, as usual, and joining me today there is Martin. I'm calling
Hello.
it like 1,000 names, different
Yeah.
names, um, and let's begin immediately today. The agenda is the usual one, so we will start with the changelog. Today we don't have a community showcase, but we will have some, in my opinion, interesting discussion and Q&A. And also, like, we will have as a very small announcement. Like it's our at this point is the usual announcement, so you might already know what's up. We can zoom in. Sorry. Um, let's start with the changelog for the next 7 days, the last 7 days. So let's see if there is something interesting to talk about. Oh, they are exposing Svelte internal. So this I think is like it was already like this in Svelte 4, and they removed Svelte internal um, in the
So
beginning.
it wasn't removed per se. It's just
Yeah,
there's
not time.
it's changed a lot. So because like you can't expect something in that's been using Svelte internal in Svelte 4 to work in Svelte 5,
Yeah,
since well it's
definitely.
internal. But it hasn't necessarily been removed. It's just not necessarily exposed through
Yeah,
like
obviously.
the package JSON.
Yeah, it was exposed, and I actually think I have like I got this bug happen to me because I was playing around with superforms, and I think it was I was trying to launch one of the examples from superforms, and it was not starting at all. So I had to update to Svelte 5 next 90. Hydrate HTML with surrounding white space and feed faster HTML tags. We are even faster. So let's see some missed opportunity. Oh, with HTML. Okay. So if you're using HTML, which by the way you should not be using unless you are generating this HTML safely, like for example, you can use these probably with some CMS or with some Markdown, for example, if you render in Markdown. But yeah, generally, like like make sure to sanitize this HTML because it will not be sanitized by Svelte. This. Let's go on with. Is this the breaking change that you were talking before?
No, there were two. This one was one.
Okay. Because
The other
we
one
actually have
is
a
later.
breaking change, move compiler.cjs to compiler/index.js. And
Mhm.
I mean, I'm always happy when we remove a CJS file.
I mean, it is still CJS. It's just
Yeah,
that
yeah,
we made it into a subfolder instead, so it can have its own package.json that
yeah.
says this is module. This is
Ah,
not a type
okay.
module project.
Correctly handle closure paths to derived by when destructuring. This is interesting because I think you can destructure by derived. And sur effect cleanup function are called with null Ds. Well, all right, this is some very technical stuff. More efficient hydration markers. We are reaching the speed of light because it's include package JSON in package. Oh,
Mhm.
this is the thing. Oh, I think this was what you were referring to, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And this is something that I think it's actually like no one was doing this, but I think it's interesting because in theory you could do something like
Scroll
what is
all the way down, all the way down
all the way down.
to the very last one. Yeah.
In theory, you could do something like this.
Yeah,
in Svelte 4. So if you want,
yeah, because it's because anything inside the curly braces is a valid JavaScript expression, and that is a valid JavaScript
yeah,
expression. It's like three statements, three separate statements. It's not
yeah,
commonly used, so
yeah. If I'm not wrong, this should result in Z passed in as foo, right?
yes,
Because
z is passed
comma,
in as
the
into
comma,
foo, and x and y are just running basically.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just executed.
yeah.
Uh, well, if it has a getter that does something, then it'll be when it processes that getter, it'll do that thing. So
Mhm. And also, we have a question like, hey, could you tell when using HTML for rendering Markdown? Why does Tailwind mess everything like typography and all? How should someone implement a Markdown editor without Tailwind mess?
So the most likely thing this is referring to is they imported they used base tailwind, and base tailwind will reset the sizes of headers, the sizes of, well, everything basically. What you want to do additionally on top of that is pull in tailwind, what was that?
Typography.
It was a tailwind
Tailwind,
typography, yeah.
yeah.
You want to pull in
Basically, you want to,
tailwind typography because you're doing markdown stuff. So you have header levels and whatever already built, pulled from tailwind styles.
basically what you want to do is you want to wrap your rendered markdown with a separate element, a div, and then you want to apply
Mhm.
the class of pros. And this pros class is basically telling Tailwind, okay, this content that you will see inside here is generated by some markdown, and so it will apply all sort of styles to headers and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that's how
So
you can use markdown with Tailwind.
yep, pretty much.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think
And
yes.
Simon Green was use pros,
Mhm.
which, by the way, use pros like the the air quotes are on pros because it's not a React thing. Okay, let's go on to insert transition error are not swallowed. Add anchored support to mount API. This I think it's like because in Svelte 5 we don't have the new, like before, if you wanted to mount a Svelte component in a specific target, you would
Mhm.
have made a new name of component and then you could pass the target. And I think this is adding the same ability to mount, which is actually the this is actually the way you should mount a Svelte component today. I don't know if we have an example. I don't think so, but I think basically you can run mount and specify where do you want to mount that component. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, Martin.
No. I think it's specifically the anchor HTML tag. What like uh, so I think this is specifically talking about the case where the component you're mounting has an anchor tag. Uh,
Oh, really?
yeah, I
Oh,
think I think I think that's what it's talking about. Because like you could already mount, you could already call mount and mount the Svelte, because that's how it does it in SvelteKit, and
obviously, obviously.
yeah, yeah.
Really, that's really weird. Why do we need an anchor tag for that? Like a separate thing. I want to explore this a bit.
Because it might not, I'm guessing, but like it might not be a very common use case to where your targeted element is an anchor tag, right? Like
Mm.
usually people expect people to hydrate, oh well, not hydrate necessarily, to mount to a div or something like that.
Oh no, Stalky is saying it's relative to an element in target.
Yeah.
So you can basically mount that component uh, before or after the anchor,
Uh,
which I think it makes sense. Like you want to mount that component inside a target, but you also don't want to remove everything from the target. You just want to mount that component after an anchor, a specific anchor. maybe it's also needed for hydration. I don't know if it's needed, but maybe like it's definitely.
Both share the logic. It's hydration will also fall back into mount if it
Yeah,
looks
exactly.
like the thing it's trying to hydrate doesn't look correct.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Okay. I think it's interesting because it gives more power to mount, which is always a good thing. Let's see if we have some Svelte kit release, and it seems no. I don't know if we have any other. Yeah, we have Svelte.js package. Oh,
mhm.
so this is the CLI utility that you are using if you are building a library in Svelte, and probably it was stripping away langts, but now in Svelte 5, langts is actually like used by Svelte to determine if they need to remove the types from JavaScript inside Svelte itself. So it's not using
Mm.
a preprocessor anymore, and this was probably a problem.
Well, no, the problem is actually that Svelte package kind of doesn't process anything. Like it will copy the results, basically your entire source code into what will be uploaded to npm.
Yeah,
So the problem is that by stripping langts, your code is still TypeScript. It's just not
yeah,
marked as
exactly. Yeah,
TypeScript
yeah, yeah.
anymore, so it won't work.
I think Svelte package actually like I think before it was copying but removing the types possibly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So and you don't want to do these anymore inside Svelte 5. So also adapter Cloudflare. I think they are doing an incredible job with adapter Cloudflare because they are working together with some Cloudflare guy. I can't remember the name, sorry, but like they are really working hard on the adapter for Cloudflare to make you like the experience between dev and prod very seamless, very good. And
Yeah.
Surfside,
Dario, I think, yeah, Dario from Cloudflare.
yeah,
Uh,
Dario,
ha-
good,
and
good.
there's been a lot of movement on the V part as well, where like if you look at recent V change logs, there's a lot of changes regarding servers, basically doing your own server side rendering,
Mhm.
which we might be able to adopt in the future, and it's really helpful for stuff like Cloudflare, where right now it's really like you have to use build instead of dev.
Yeah,
We're hoping so that you can mirror the build environment in dev instead.
yeah. I think like what you are referring to is like in Vite, they are working to allow you to have like a custom runtime
Yeah,
inside
yeah,
that. That's what because basically like the whole problem with Cloudflare is that Cloudflare is running your application in a runtime that is not Node. Is running in
yeah.
the I think it's worker
V8
runtime.
isolate. Yeah, yeah, the worker runtime is a V8 isolate. So
Exactly. So
it's
there
still
are
V8, but
slight
it's not.
differences that
Yeah,
can bite you if you're not careful. And I think what they are trying to do with Vite, and probably it will be also adopted by Svelte in the future, is like allow you to have your runtime. Like you can run basically even in dev, you can
yeah.
run with Cloudflare. Very cool.
Yeah, it's not something people have to worry about as a SvelteKit user. It's something that SvelteKit will have to worry about as a implementer, really.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So I guess look forward to like long term having better dev experience with SvelteKit.
And I mean, we are talking about Cloudflare, but obviously these also apply to all things because, like, if you are deploying to Edge runtime, it's still a different runtime. If you are deploying
Yeah,
to, I don't know,
it's yeah, the change is just more minimal because like even from SvelteKit 1.0, like at least for platform as a service and for serverless, it's more like Lambda serverless. It's more closer. It's already close. The dev environment is already close to what you're expecting,
yeah,
minus the usual like node nice like if you have a node environment, then you can do file file imports and whatnot, which you can't do in serverless.
yes, yeah.
I think. Yeah, so like that. So at least with serverless and PAS, it's not as big of a change. With something like Cloudflare and what was the other one that was also quite different? There was
Um,
another one, but I can't think of it.
I mean, there are a bunch. I think Winter.js, but Winter.js is actually
Oh
like
yeah, yeah,
following the standards, so it should be close enough. I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
There are a bunch of runtimes. They are popping up as like mushrooms. Okay, I think like the changelog is done. We can move
Mhm.
to the announcement, which is the usual announcement. Like Svelte Summit is getting closer and closer. I don't know if you can still submit a talk because like Kevin was like trying to go over the talk during Easter. I don't know if he actually did it in the end, but like you can try. So if you want to talk at Svelte Summit, you can submit a talk. Um, and the
Oh no, it's way over. Last day to submit the talk was February 29th. That's a month of
yeah, I
two.
mean,
Like,
actually, like I think you could actually submit a talk until some days ago because that was the thing. But I mean, it's fine. Like,
it's very close. Yeah, I tried. I just tried it. It's 500 internal error now, so
okay, okay,
should be
good.
close.
But April 27 is getting closed, so we will soon have our like lovely Svelte conference, and this is the sponsor. And as usual, like a big clap for our MCs, which will be Kevin and Brittany. Okay, I think we can actually stop. I mean, yeah, we can stop screen sharing for the moment and go back to our view because now we can move to the other part of the of the of the team of this week's Svelte. And first thing first, like if you have any question related to web development, Svelte specifically, obviously, feel free to drop it in chat because we can answer that later. But in the meantime, we can start some discussion, and we want to hear from you what your opinion are about this. This discussion are generally like got from the Discord, which you can join if you go to. I think it's svelte.dev/chat is the Discord, right?
I think we also have the short link. I think yeah, this
Yeah,
svelte.dev/discord should work, and I think discord.gg/svelte should also work.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think
if you
both of
want to
those should.
join the
Oh,
Discord,
it was slash chat. Okay.
yeah, that's fine. If you want to join the Discord, you can ask questions. There are a bunch of people you can lunch discussion and stuff like that. And those discussions are actually like harvested from the Discord. And one of the discussion is actually very fitting for what we were talking about because one of the discussion that we want to approach is when to go serverless. So for those who doesn't know, this like for those who doesn't know, serverless is kind of of a like buzzword for the moment because at the end of the day
Right.
there's a server behind a serverless.
It's
But
not just that, and a lot of people also use serverless colloquially to mean platform as a service. So like something like what most people are using with Vercel is not really quote unquote serverless. Not as in like even the technical like there is no server, but
mhm,
more like it's a singular, like when people say serverless, uh they they usually referring to PAS, where it's actually just a singular server running your code.
mhm,
Whereas serverless used to mean specifically it's running on the edge, for example, like Cloudflare workers, where it's like it's on basically all of their data centers
mhm,
simultaneously. Whereas with the Vercel does have that with Vercel Edge,
mhm.
but that's not the default deployment. Most people
One-
are actually on platform as a service where it's just okay, it looks like serverless, but you're only on one server basically.
yeah. But I mean, like the other like very specific thing about serverless is that they don't live forever. So basically, like with
Mhm.
Lambda functions, what it happens is that when there is a new request, the Lambda function spin up, and there you have the infamous cold start, because obviously it takes some time to launch the Lambda function, usually a couple of seconds, and after that it will run your request, and after, I think there is a limit, a hard limit, like on Vercel it should be like 10 seconds on the hobby plan, and after that it will go down. I mean,
So yes and no. That's something you need to be careful with, because like a lot of people assume that okay, every that means every request is isolated, but
yeah, no,
not necessarily.
uh,
There's
like,
you might
or,
get two requests from two different users,
yeah,
and they hit the same instance,
yeah.
because it's still alive from the it's still warm from the previous user, from the first user, and if you're storing any sensitive data, that might be shared.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's why you need to pay attention, for example, to use stores on the server and stuff like that. But like the thing is that the function will spin up, it will handle your request, and then unless there are new requests that comes to the server, it will spin down, and then so what you will see is that like the first time that you hit that function, it will take some times, and if there are a consistent flow of requests, it will actually stay warm and stay alive to handle all those requests.
Right.
Um, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. For people who aren't used to serverless, when we're saying cold start or warm start, cold start is when it has to boot up from zero basically, and start your app, and so not just start your application but start the runtime entirely, and then start your application. Whereas a warm start is the runtime itself is still on from the
Mhm.
previous run, and it only has just to execute your code.
Yeah.
So a warm start is very fast because it doesn't have to boot up the environment, whereas a cold start is very slow because it has to boot up the environment first and then it can run your code.
And for example, if you are deploying to the edge with Vercel, what is happening is that like with Edge, you don't have a cold start because like in theory you have a much more limited runtime. So it's a very small runtime with a very subset of instructions. So it's a runtime that can run basically near your user if you want. So basically they're deploying your code to all those mini server near your users that does not have a cold start because it's a very lightweight runtime. But yeah, that's kind of serverless too. And like the discussion, so the question was when to go serverless, because obviously like there is a trade-off to going serverless. Like the other thing is you could run your own server, and if you run your own server, you might, I mean, or even if you're running a server that is managed, so you still don't have to do all the hard wiring and maintenance about the server. But the thing is that once you deploy your application there, the server is long running. It will never stop. Your application will always be ready to serve people requests.
It-
Uh, but there are trade-offs, obviously. So the
Mhm.
discussion is when do you want to go serverless and when do you want to go on your own server? Um, Personally, I think like serverless, like the advantage of serverless is that you can theoretically scale very up or very down. So if you are running an application that you don't care too much about, maybe like it's just a fun thing that you're throwing around, and you can run it on the free plan from Netlify or Vercel. The advantage of serverless is that if for some reason there is a huge spike in requests because your app goes viral, in theory you don't need to add more resource to the server, because with serverless, like it's all managed by Vercel. So the more requests comes in, the more Lambda function will spin up. While if you're running that's the same thing on your own server, you need to provide the same those resources basically. So if you have a single server that is running your application, and I don't know, a million people connect to your server may even crash because there's too much traffic. So that's one thing to to consider. But please,
On the other hand, like if you, well, there's the asterisk, right? Like if you, there was the problem with Netlify a month ago or something, where
mm,
someone did have that situation occur to them, right? Like where it did scale up, but so did the cost, right? Like it went from zero to some ridiculous $10,000 fee.
yeah,
Like they did cancel it for the user, the fee, but like it is something to consider with serverless, where like yes, you have infinite scaling, but that means your cost is also infinitely
yeah,
scaled.
absolutely,
So
absolutely,
you need to prepare, like a lot of services do have like caps put in, like you can put in a manual cap, like okay, like if it hits $100 then stop
yeah,
serving entirely. But at that point also you should consider, well, I mean, if you already know what your budget is going to be, why not consider your own server?
yeah,
Because you already have a fixed amount that you're willing to uh, part with every month anyway.
yeah,
Um, with your own server, you can yeah, Versal does limit the spending. Netlify, the CEO said that they, or CTO, I think, I forgot. They said they're going by a um forgiveness basis, basically. Like if it's the first time you're doing something like this and you hit a really big bill for some reason, we'll forgive it for you. But it still makes me nervous to do something like that, where like
absolutely,
I'm relying on someone else's kindness to
yeah.
forgive my bills.
Yeah, there's
um
also like
eh,
every once in a while we hear about those horror story about like, oh, I got charged like 200K by Vercel or by, and
and
usually like
yeah,
it's also the smart thing to do from them to cancel your bill because they don't want to have the backlash from the people. But obviously, like I will be scared too. Like if I received some, like if I would receive some kind of bill, I would probably like be pretty scared too. So uh, and there's
and also
also
another thing to keep in mind is like this, the scaling thing doesn't just apply to serverless. Like you can scale a single server quite a long way, actually. Like even if you one day get like linked to Reddit or Hacker News, just having a reasonable a very conservative caching policy,
yeah,
like let's say you serve a cache with a time limit of 1 minute. That's already going to limit the maximum amount of fresh requests you get in a day to 86,400, right? Like
yeah.
you're never gonna go before above that, because like after the first hit is fresh, but afterwards, I'm assuming if it's going to HN or Reddit, then it's not something that needs to be uniquely served per user.
Yeah, exactly. It
Like
also depends
it's
on,
something that it can be cached. So like you're already limiting, like you can already do a lot of work that way without having to swap to serverless, just because you're worried that okay, maybe one day this will get popular on
yeah,
HN or Reddit. But like you can still do that with like a very basic what, a head snare box with the lowest ARM VPS tier, with Pocket Base as your backend.
yeah,
Then or even like even just the thing actual like literal file. I don't know why you would use a flat file, but you could if you wanted to, a flat file, not just SQLite, and it would still serve fine. Or even like maybe you're overthinking it. Maybe your site can be a statically served, in which case,
just
you know,
put it as you
you should consider static hosting, where they can serve basically unlimited users for no cost, like Cloudflare Pages, for example, right? Like if you're not using any of the worker side of things, it's basically free. So and it will scale as well, just if not better than a serverless runtime will. So consider that. Consider if you really need serverless first. I think is
Yeah.
my key takeaway,
And
because
interesting point is,
nowadays it's a lot easier to get away not serverless.
yeah,
Go
and
on.
an interesting point is also that like once you get really big, you also want to ditch serverless, because serverless very often means that you are paying a lot for that. So if you're getting really big, and I'm talking about like Facebook style, like if you are the next Mark Zuckerberg, you really want your own servers managed by yourself, and where you can put your stuff on. So yeah, serverless is kind of in the middle. Like if it's very very basic, maybe you want to go serverless. If you are starting to get some, maybe you want to go serverless, but it's also good to have your own thing. I think yeah, it's kind of that middle ground. Like if it's something that you just want to use yourself, just go with your own server, because I mean, if you can get a server, if you already have a VPS, for example, you can use services like Coolify.io that I'm actually using right now, which is very good because you get basically the same experience as Vercel, where you get redeploy on commits and stuff like that, and at the same time you get like you don't get the like scary part of Vercel. Like okay,
Right.
now I'm getting super popular and I owe Vercel $1,000.
Yeah. Like if we go to Pocket Business FAQ, like does this scale? Like even without optimizations, Pocket Base can easily serve 10,000 plus persistent real-time connections on a cheap $4 Hetzner VPS. So like, are you really going to get 10,000 persistent real-time connections?
Yeah.
Maybe, but
Maybe
I
like
would say for most people, the answer is going to be no. And if you are one of the people whose answers is yes, you would know, because you should have you well you should know rather, you because you should have a good idea of how much it's going to cost you. um and that's the other thing with serverless, right? Like it's not necessarily that the costs are big. Like if it's just a matter of costs are big, enterprise level is very much willing to pay costs are big. It's the fact that serverless as the serverless cost is variable. Like it changes from month to month. It's not very consistent.
uh,
And number one thing businesses want is consistency. Like knowing that, okay, the bill is $10,000 a month. I'm okay with that. If it's January, it's 13,000. February, it's 5,000. March, it's 20,000. Like that's very dangerous for a business, because they don't know, they can't necessarily allocate their resources for the year. They don't
yeah,
know, are we going to have enough cash by the end of the year or not? Whereas like something, even if it costs more per month on average, like where something is allocated at like 15,000 a month, 15,000 a month, 15,000 a month, they know that's a fixed fee for them. So it's much easier to plan around. Like, okay, we can set aside 15,000 a month for the server. What are we gonna do with the rest?
yeah. Yeah, very interesting. And I think, I mean, I don't know if any of you has any opinion on this, but in if not, we can move to the next discussion. And actually, I mean, you know what? Like instead of moving to the next discussion, because we can use this discussion like in a future episode. What I want to do is actually go to the Q&A, because it's actually kind of related to this.
Mhm.
And the Q&A that we got is like the question that we got on Discord was, how do I cache that data returned from the load function? Which is also very interesting. Like in general, I think we were talking about caching. Like you could, um, there are a load of ways to cache something on the web.
Mhm.
There is like the proper way to do it, like which is let the browser cache everything. Because I don't know if you know about it, but when you return a response, you can instruct the browser that you want that response to be kept in cache, and the browser will actually save that response and serve that response back when you hit the same endpoint. And it's very easy to do because you just need a header. I mean, I'm saying it's very easy, but it's actually pretty complex. The cache is not actually complex, but invalidating cache is very complex. So you need to be very, very like attentive on what you cache, because once you cache, like if you over cache something, if you instruct the browser to keep that document in cache forever, you might not have a way to communicate back to your user, hey, you now need to delete the cache. So
Mhm.
I want to show you the header is cache control. So I want to show you the MDN page for cache control. So I will add, and let me change the banner because now we have a new Q&A. How to cache. So let me show how to cache. So this cache control is a header that you can return from your HTTP request, and it has a very specific way that you need to do, but the possibly important bit is the max age. So for how many seconds you want this page to be the page that the user will display. There are other things, but basically, I think they give you an example. Here it is. So what you can do is you can say cache control max age 604,800. This means that that page will be the same for the user, will be kept in cache by the browser for exactly uh, 10,000 days. So yeah, for a long time. I think it's actually possibly 10,000 hours. Sorry. So it's like okay, it's 100 and sorry, it's 168 hours, which
Mhm.
should be 7 days. So by these, you're saying that the when the browser receives that page, that document, it will keep it in cache for 1 week. So if the user during that week will go back to the same endpoint, it will try to fetch it again, and it will get this served like in 0 millisecond. You will get an answer because it's actually in the browser. And you can actually set other stuff. For example, with no cache, this means okay, I don't want to like the response can be stored in cache, but the response must be validated with the origin server before each reuse. So this means you can store it in cache, but it still needs to go to the server, and then it will validate back. And there is must revalidate that you can set that indicates that like you can store in cache, but the moment it becomes stale, it must be validated with the origin server before reusing. So you can cache it for 1 week, but after that you need to revalidate for the server.
Right.
And yeah, please.
I think the also people get surprised with must revalidate because people think it means like, oh, it must revalidate on every request. That's not as the MDN paragraph says. That's not actually the case. It's that it must revalidate after the expiration date, but before the expiration date, it can just refer to the cache and not ever check your origin server. So be careful with that. Like that must revalidate is probably not the what you think it is, because I've seen that in a lot of setups where people think it means, oh, okay, I don't have to worry about the cache if I use misrevalidate. No, that's actually it's quite the opposite. You actually need to worry about the cache because you've just told the client, yeah, you can keep using this until it expires, pretty much.
And this is very, very interesting because this is actually very in line with what we were talking about. If you declare that this is a public cache, this means that it can be stored in a shared cache. And this is basically not for the browser itself, but it's more for a CDN. Because basically, the moment you declare your cache control to be public, usually what a CDN does, for example, if you have a Cloudflare CDN or Vercel that is using its own CDN, is saying that whoever from the world requests that page will receive the same response. So this is very interesting because, again, if you're building a static website, a website that is just a web app, for example, that where all the logic is on the client, you can actually serve that as a static website, and it's public. You can put it as public. You can have a very long cache control, max age, and basically your server will almost never be hit because whoever requests that page will get the cached version from the CDN, which is very very interesting. Um, there's also a very interesting way to cache, which is stale while revalidate. This is super interesting in my opinion because what you are saying here is that um, like you can keep it in cache for this time, and after the cache is expired, so after is expired, the browser will still keep the same document in the cache. But if someone access the page within this time frame, so between 604 800 and like after 86,000 seconds later, it will still be served the old version, but in the meantime, the browser will actually contact the server and get a fresh copy of the page, which is very interesting because this is also like it's a quite a niche way to like you cannot do this with all the pages, but for some pages where maybe the content changes but not too much, you can really use this, and this will really make sure that the user get a response immediately, and then it instruct the server to go and get the new fresh content, which is very interesting. We're also getting some comment, I think.
Yeah. And also the other thing to keep in mind is like it might not just be the browser that respects these headers. There's a lot of servers in between you, the origin server, and the final destination, the user, where in between they might well, it's starting to become useless now with HTTPS in a way, but like as uh, but even with HTTPS, like when you have something like a setup like Cloudflare, for example, that can still read the contents because they're the ones serving the HTTPS, the TLS certificate. They can respect the cache headers too and cache it on their end. So with as so um in between the user and you, not just the browser, but also consider like Cloudflare or whatever layer you're using there, might also cache will also respect your cache headers, whether that's a good or bad thing. Of course, with that one, you can control it, like you can clear the cache more easily because you have control over that. But as Paulo said earlier, like if on the browser side you can't really control it, so and you can't really just tell the user, hey, go force refresh, because they might not know what a force refresh is, even if you tell them is shift control F5 or whatever, shift control R. uh, it's like you have to contact the user beforehand, so like the user has to contact you and say have they have a problem. They might not be able to contact you if your website is cached and for accidentally for a long period of time. So
Yeah,
do consider not making unnecessarily long
yeah,
caching strategies, because it might be very hard to fix afterwards.
yeah. And this is also something interesting because most of the builds our day, so Vite does that too. with static assets. So, for example, your CSS, even your JavaScript, when you do a build, you will get a static asset. What they do is that they actually use an immutable thing. That this basically means never, ever, ever, ever serve anything else that is not that file. And the reason why they can do this is because they actually uh, append an hash to the file, and the hash is calculated based on the content of the file. And this means that given that this hash will only change when the actual content of the file change, when the content of the file change, you will actually get a different request that is not like interfered by this immutable value. But if the content of the asset is not changing, it will be cached forever. So this is very cool, because let's say that you have your icon, your favicon inside your SvelteKit application, and you are never going to change that. The very interesting bit is that once you can use these with V to you build your application, they get served with max age very high and immutable, and this means that your user will never have to download your favicon again after the first time. And the other thing that I wanted to say is that, like, there are also I think it's I don't think they have this information here, but there's also a way to instruct the cache that needs to change when something changes, which is the vary header. I think it's cache vary.
I
Uh,
think keyword you were looking for is e tag, but yeah, because yeah, so like when you serve an asset, like you can also basically give, it's not necessarily a hash. You could use a hash for it, but basically you're saying this version of the file has this tag with it, an e tag with it, and then when that changes, that means the file has changed. So go pick up the new version.
mhm.
Yeah, very. There you go.
Yeah, what I was talking about is this vary header, which is not super supported, so pay attention to
Yeah.
it. But the thing is that basically when you have this vary, I don't know if it's only vary or content vary. No, I can't remember specifically, but basically you can tell, okay, when there is this cookie that changes, uh,
Mhm.
like revalidate the request. So this is a different request, which is also interesting, because this means that you can get around, for example, with, as long as there is the same user that is logged in, I will serve the same cached page, but once the cookie change, I will revalidate that cache. Very interesting. But this was like the one of the part, like how to cache. It's way bigger than this, because this is how to cache in the browser, but you can actually get around to caching with a, a lot of things. So just to show you, like the very easiest way to cache something, and again, this also come back to the idea of serverless that can shut down and stuff like that. But the super simple way to cache something is just store it when it's executed. So if we are on the server, for example, you could literally just do this: const cache equal, I don't know, 0, for example. I mean, const actually let cache. And let's say that I do a very expensive calculation. So function expensive calculation, which I don't know does uh, for let I equal 0, I mine is less than, I don't know, a lot, I plus plus. And if I do this, and let's say that after I do this, uh, I return 42, right? So if I do this expensive calculation here, and I have to do this inside the load function, uh, const return, it's equal to expensive calculation. This obviously will take, actually, ret. This will take a long time to run. And this means that if you are showing this like when you refresh. Actually, it takes very like too few.
I think it optimized it out because it can see it's an empty. Yeah,
Let's. I don't want to log because I think. I mean, let's do this because I think logging take a long time. So let's do console.log running. So when you refresh, this should
yeah,
log, and it takes a long time, as you can see.
yeah.
To I don't know why it's not logging for some reason, but it
I
takes.
think it's buffering. I think it's buffering the result of the log, so you're not gonna see it until it ends the
Okay.
all 10,000.
But yeah, as you can see, like it takes a long time to run, and maybe we can even do this to have. Let's say that it's an async function, and we await a new promise. Set timeout R for 2 seconds, so that we can have a better. Let me shut down the server. So we are taking 2 seconds to do something. So await this. Now, if we launch the server, this will take at least 2 seconds to go up. I don't know why it's doing. Let me remove everything and let me var dump. Oh, var dump data. Uh, if I refresh, what is happening?
It might be working. It's just that it's. I mean, we have nothing on the page, right?
Yeah, no, it should
Like,
have like the JSON stringify data.
fair, I guess.
I don't know what's
We.
happening. I think let me refresh.
I think we crashed the server
Yeah,
because of
it's
the earlier one, the console log.
let me refresh the page. So as you can see, like it takes a bit, and
There
then
you go.
it returns 42. Now, the easiest way to cache this is instead of adding like running this expensive calculation every time, what you can do is like you can check if cache is populated. If cache is populated, you can return directly cache with ret equal cache. Otherwise, what I can do is once I run the expensive calculation, I also set cache equal to ret. And so I am caching the return. So now, whenever I run the first time, and it takes time, but when I run the second time, it's very, very fast. So this is the most basic way of caching. But again, you have to be very, very careful with this because this is shared. So if you're deploying this to a VPS, this calculation will never rerun again. So you need to be very careful about
Mm.
what you want to cache. And there are
I think
also
even
PM
in
packages that
serverless,
help you.
yeah, you have to
Uh,
be careful even in serverless because it let's say you get a lot of requests, like it
yeah,
might
exactly.
never shut down. So
Yeah, exactly. There are also npm packages that help you with that. One should
mhm.
be LRU cache, which should be yeah LRU cache. Uh, Basically, like you can create this LRU cache, and then you can specify how much, like the size of the cache, what to do when it's disposed, the time to leave. So I want this cache to be like active only for 1 second, 2 second. You can update the age on get, so whenever you get the same value, you get the new age and stuff like that. So as you can see, like
for
it's
yeah,
key
for people
value.
who aren't familiar, it's LRU refers to least recently used. So it's a data structure where you push out the least least recently used stuff. The pushing out information that will soon be used again.
Exactly.
So
And so you could use these in memory to have a small cache before you actually go and like refresh the cache. So this is another
mhm.
way to cache your information on the server. You can also use the header. So inside the load function, you have the set header function, and you can say set header, and then you can set the header that you want to set. It should be, as we can say, cache control, and then you can set the header. What? Set header is not a function?
I think it's what was it? Get that
Set header.
header. It is set headers with an S.
I think I make this error so many times, and I think if it's set headers, you actually need to pass an object.
Yeah. It is. You
Headers.
pass an object with a key value.
So you can pass an object, and in this case will be cache control, and then you can pass max age 60. Like this will cache the result for 60 seconds, and I think, I don't know if it works inside web containers, but let's check. So and actually, yeah, let me remove this. Let me remove cache, and let me remove cache from here. So now we are doing it the browser way, basically, and this means that this expensive calculation will run the first time, and it's running now. And in theory, now if I refresh the page, it's still running. I don't know if the cache actually applies inside the web container.
I think the problem is, I mean, it's not just web containers. The problem is like when you do a explicit refresh, sometimes it just ignores the cache. Especially, especially a lot of browsers, when you press the refresh button twice, it will kick out the cache.
Yeah,
because
it could be.
Yeah. So anything. So it's hard to tell with a forced refresh like that.
Yeah, exactly. Because this is actually like literally changing the thing. I want to see the network.
You can. Yeah, you can still see the header, of course.
Yeah, let me see if the headers are there.
Yeah. Okay.
And actually, I think
is it there?
I don't know if max age 60. Yeah. So
okay.
This should be in theory cached. I don't know if maybe if I do this. Yeah, no, it's still running. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's actually working inside the web container. So, but this should work. So this is how you can set your headers on the load function if you want to cache them. But you can also use the LRU cache package that we talked about. You can even build your own simple version with a map or a set and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's it for caching. Pay very, very much attention. Like caching is one of the hardest problems inside like web development. So pay very much attention to caching. You can also use a service worker if you want to cache something to the service worker level. But yeah, there are very much different ways to cache stuff around, but pay very much attention again. Okay, I think that's it. And thank you everyone for watching. I hope you learned something. Thank you, Martin, to like co-host with me. As usual, it's very, very pleasant to chat with you, and we talked about a bunch of very interesting stuff. Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you again next Friday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.